Hello everybody. We had a couple of technical difficulties, but I don't think that will make a difference for the rest of what we've got going on. Just want to say welcome and thank you for tuning in. I know that it'll take Instagram just a second to notify everybody and get everybody caught up. I just want to start off really quick with a quick word of prayer. Father in heaven, thank you for being here with us today, and thank you for giving us the ability to broadcast and giving us the ability to share your word across the airwaves with folks. Thank you so much for the time that we have, and I ask that you would bless this time, anoint it, and allow it to be a blessing for those who will see, Father. Touch hearts and prompt hearts to watch and be filled. Father, I thank you for hearing us, and we pray this in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, this is going to be a short broadcast for a lot of reasons. I don't want to be wordy with some of this stuff, and I think mostly what I want folks to be able to take this information and be able to think about it. And if you give folks too much to think about, it's easy for folks to forget, and it's easy for even me to just be distracted enough to just say, hey, that's too much. And so this week, every day on my iPhone, I have it's called the Ellen White app, and then I have Bible Gateway and a couple other different Bibles, and all of them send me the thought for the day. And it was very interesting. On one of the days, everybody sent me the same thought, and I don't know how that happened. And I won't go so far as to say that I'll take it as a sign, but I took it as a sign, and that at least for me, it was something that I felt like I needed to kind of take a look at and pay attention to, because I think it's something that I know that I struggle with in my own personal life. And dollars to donuts, I'm probably not the only person who struggles in this area spiritually. And so, first of all, I want to read for you the Bible verse. And the Bible verse was from Hebrews 12:1. Now, I know that I'm in a series with the Ten Commandments, and we're going to talk about that really briefly today as well. But I want to preface that with this Bible verse, okay? So Hebrews 12, verse 1. Hebrews is in the New Testament, and it comes at the end of the Pauline letters. And it's the book of Hebrews. We're in chapter 12, and we're in verse 1. Here we go. It says, I'm reading from the Contemporary English Version, "Such a large crowd of witnesses is all around us, So we must get rid of everything that slows us down, especially the sin that just won't let go. And we must be determined to run the race that is ahead of us.
Amen.
Now, most of you are, or I should say most of you, but a lot of us are familiar with the King James Version. And so I want to read this, and so for some of you it's going to trigger those old school thoughts when you were a kid growing up. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us.
Amen.
And so today I actually titled this short message, I called it Lay Aside, because number one, when I got my message, they were all entitled Lay Aside, and of course that triggered all kinds of thoughts in my mind, and I thought about all the different things and all the things that came to me about laying aside. I thought about the sin that so easily besets us, and I thought about all those things, and then I decided I wanted to go to that contemporary English version because I like that version of the Bible. And I like that version of the Bible because it explains things, or it goes, and it literally goes back to the original language, and it takes those words and it interprets those words into more of the intended meaning, and then it explains the version of the Bible in that vein. And so that's why I wanted to go back and compare. So when it talked about everything that we're encompassed about, it says here such a large crowd of witnesses is all around us, and I got to thinking, everyone is watching. And I remember as a kid growing up, that used to be one of my hang-ups, is being so worried about what other people think. And I remember even going to therapy and having a psychiatrist tell me one time, I shouldn't be so worried about what other people think. And yet, here in this scripture, one of the things that the writer of the book of Hebrews says right here, people are watching. And so what he says is, it's not so much that he's getting hung up on the fact that everyone's watching, but what he says is, because people are, there's a large crowd of witnesses, he says, we must get rid of everything that slows us down. Now, we can expound on that, and I could probably spend a whole hour on talking about the reasons why we need to worry about the things that slow us down and whatnot. But Paul is, I think about that Bible text where Christ Himself says, shake the dust off and keep on going. He says this, so we must get rid of everything that slows us down, especially, and I like this, because he's making a distinction, everything that slows us down, and then he goes into something he says specifically, especially the sin that just won't let go. Now, that King James, when it says, lay aside the sin that so easily besets us. When I look at those two versions, I still come with the same conclusion. And that conclusion is this: laying aside the sin that so easily besets me. Get rid of everything that slows us down, especially the sin that won't let go. How easy is it to do that? Is that easy? Is that hard to do? I mean, the words that are used make it sound like I could shake the dust off my feet and move on. It makes it sound like I could just walk away. It makes it sound like I just, like in the movies, you're in the plane, and the plane is too heavy, and we need to get over this pass or we're going to crash. And so they start throwing stuff out of the plane. They start throwing the luggage out, get rid of it so that the plane will get lighter so they can get over the hill. And it's that tense moment where you're watching, and even you as the viewer, when you're watching the movie, you're thinking about all the things that get thrown out, and they're, and you want them to throw it out, and you're going faster, faster. You want them to get rid of the stuff on the plane. And this Bible text is saying the same thing. Get rid of everything that slows us down. And I got to thinking, what slows me down? And am I hanging on to things that slow me down? And is it that I'm unwilling to let go of those things? Is it that I don't want to? Are they grabbing onto me and holding on to me? Or is it that I am holding on to them? Am I just not letting go? See, he says, especially the sin that just won't let go. And so, of course, now this is where my analytic mind comes into play. See, sin is defined as technically that which transgresses the law, something that breaks the law. But when we look at the spirit of what sin is the thing that separates you from God. It's anything that comes in between you and your relationship with God. Technically, that would be sin. And so the problem is we bring up all the baggage of as we're growing up. We bring up all the criticism as we're growing up. If you keep the commandments, you're being legalistic because you're keeping the law and you're marching to a beat that just doesn't exist anymore. And yet, Paul, who is talking to the Hebrews here, this book is written to believers. This book is not written to folks who don't believe and talking to them about grace and talking to folks who don't really know about Christ's love. He's talking to people who actually know, who have been practicing, who know better. And yet, right here, he is not talking about the legalism of the law. He's not talking about the rule of law. He is not talking about the things about the law that are so, how would you say, those things about the law that people say we don't have to follow anymore because Christ died for us on the cross. Paul is talking about sin that actually weighs us down. See, I was reading this week in my devotion that sometimes we consider and we think about sin. There are those who consider the idea of that notion of once I'm saved, that's it, I'm done. And yet, we have to consider Ham, one of Noah's sons. He got on the ark. He was saved from the destruction that God gave to the world because they refused to acknowledge Him as their creator. Ham got on the ark, and yet later we know, as we read the story in the Bible, Ham mocked his father and then literally became he was the father. His son's name was Cush, who was the father of Canaan. They were the father of the promised land, and that whole generation, those next generations, all of those were the generations of the Amalekites and the Hittites and all of those ites, the Jebusites, all of those nations who refused. They knew who God was, and yet they rejected God. They erected their own gods. They created false gods. They created gods that that they believed in. They acknowledged gods of the world that none of us even can comprehend where they existed or where they came from. And yet, what was so amazing about that was Ham. Ham existed before the flood. Ham's grandfather knew Adam face to face. Ham's grandfather knew Adam face to face. And yet, he could be saved from the flood that destroyed the world and still reject God. So when I think about this, lay aside the sin that so easily besets us. Yeah, it's a difficult thing. Some will not let go. They will not lay it aside. And yet, the sin doesn't want to let go. Paul makes this distinction. The sin doesn't want to let go, but we have the ability to let go of the sin. Mm-hmm. So, I guess my thought for all of us today is this. As we go through the Ten Commandments, as we read through them, and as we consider them, and I'm going to read through them really quick here, as we consider them, what I want you to think about with the Ten Commandments is, are these commands, are these rules, are these things that that God has given us that we can hold on to? That when I just got through talking about the sin that so easily besets us, that grabs on, it won't let us go. That what Paul says in Hebrews 12, that we can lay it aside. That Ellen White, when she gives us counsel, to lay it aside. That if we could lay these things aside, how different our lives would be if we could lay aside the sin and the decisions and the things that keep us from a relationship with Christ, things that keep us from praying to God. Let me read this to you. I am the Lord your God, the one who brought you out of Egypt, where you were slaves. Do not worship any god except me. Do not make any idols that look like anything in the sky, or the earth, or in the ocean, under the earth. Do not bow down and worship idols. I am the Lord your God, and I demand all of your love. If you reject me, I will punish your families for 3 or 4 generations. But if you love me and obey my laws, I will be kind to your family for thousands of generations. Do not misuse my name. I am the Lord your God, and I will punish anyone who misuses my name. Remember that the Sabbath day belongs to me. You have 6 days when you can do your work, but the 7th day of each week belongs to me, your God. No one is to work on that day, not you, your children, your slaves, your animals, or the foreigners who live in your towns. In 6 days I made the sky, the earth, and the oceans, and everything in them. But on the 7th day I rested. That's why I made the Sabbath a special day that belongs to me. Respect your father and your mother, and you will live a long time in the land that I am giving you. Do not murder. Be faithful in marriage. Do not steal. Do not tell lies about others. Do not desire to possess anything that belongs to another person. Not a house, a wife, a husband, a slave, an ox, or a donkey, or anything else. That was the 10 Commandments in the Contemporary English Version. As I consider those things, and I look at what God is actually saying to the children of Israel when He hands them the tables of stone through Moses. I look at the things that are said here, and I'm reminded of the things that so easily beset us, and yet I'm also reminded of things that are so easy to walk away from. And so the question that I have for all of us today is, are you willing to let go of the things that so easily trap you, so easily ensnare you. Maybe the better question is what is it in your life that ensnares you? What is it that trips you up? What are those things that catch you off guard? Are those things something that catch you off guard often? Does it happen all the time? If it does, and you find it difficult to let go of these things, then my advice is this. This is where our communication and our time with God comes into play. It's difficult for me to let go of certain types of things if I'm not spending time with, for example, let me back up. If I have a wandering eye and I'm constantly looking at other women and I want to spend time with other women, that's one thing if I'm single. But if I'm married and I have my wife, if I spend more time with her and I'm spending more time intimately with her and loving her and hugging her and letting her hug me and holding hands and spending alone time with her, then it's easier for me to turn away from the temptations of others. Why? Because anything that somebody has to offer me is just that. It's just something that they have to offer. It doesn't mean it's not attractive, and it doesn't mean that it's something that in other circumstances it wouldn't be desirable. But what it does, what I have is I have a relationship already with somebody that anything that somebody else has to offer, I already have. So it's not necessary for me to seek that from someone else because I have it with her. The problem that folks run into is when you spend less time, then all of a sudden those things that seem more desirable become easier to say, I want to partake. Lay aside those things that so easily beset us, because those things that so easily beset us want to hold on to us and slow us down. There's all kinds of people watching, and it's not that I want you to care about what other people are thinking, but other people are watching maybe because if you can figure out how to lay it aside, it makes it easier for them to figure out how to lay it aside. If you can let it go, you give someone else a blueprint on how to let it go. And the only reason why we're able to let it go is because we are following Christ. We do it because Christ does it. And when you go back to that text in Hebrews 12:1, that's actually what Paul is actually saying in Hebrews 12. Because he helps us understand we must keep our eyes on Jesus, who leads us and makes our faith complete. He endured the shame of being nailed to a cross because he knew later on he would be glad he did. Now he is seated at the right hand of God's throne. So keep your mind on Jesus, who put up with many insults from sinners. Then you won't get discouraged and give up. None of you have been hurt in your battle against sin, but you have forgotten that the scriptures say to God's children, when the Lord punishes you, don't make light of it. And when he corrects you, don't be discouraged. The Lord corrects people who he loves and disciplines. He calls those his own. So, finally this. It's so easy for us to get discouraged. It's so easy for us to think about those things that we can't let go of, and it's like, well, I just can't do it. The blueprint that Paul is giving to us is following Jesus and remembering to cling to him, remembering to turn to him, because he was tempted just like we were. And even though it was difficult, he endured because he knew what the outcome would be if he endured. He knew that if he could endure, that the reward on the other side was so great. And the beautiful thing about it is that by accepting him and following him, you and I receive the same reward. We receive that reward not because of anything that we do. We receive the reward because He endured to the end.
Amen.
He died for us so that we wouldn't have to. And He died the death that we won't have to die, so that we can receive the reward that He grabbed a hold and secured for us.
Amen.
So, lay aside. Yeah, hard to do, easy to say. But keep our eyes on Jesus. Stay connected. If you have the YouVersion Bible, I invite you to download that app on your phones, the YouVersion Bible. And if you follow me, I believe I'm marked for words, or if you just look for my name, Mark Matthews, on the YouVersion Bible, what you'll find is I have a series of Bible verses, and they're all under the line "Stay Connected." And if you want and you need that group of Bible verses, you can do that, and you can just click on that "Stay Connected," and it will give you a list. And every time in my devotion, and I find verses that I think are appropriate to go, I just keep adding them to "Stay Connected," "Stay Connected," because that's my passion for myself. Is that what do I need to do in order to stay connected to Christ, and what can I leave for others to help them stay connected to Christ? And that's my thought for today, as far as helping us as we begin studying these 10 commandments and what these commandments actually mean. The idea of the commandments is not for us to have these rules that burden us down, but these commandments, these commands, these things from God's own mouth to help us to stay connected to Him.
Amen.
All right. Hey, folks, I'm really glad that you tuned in today. I'm glad that you decided to watch us. I'm so thankful. I hope that you have a happy Sabbath, and I hope that you have a blessed week. If you need anything as far as prayer goes, I invite you to go to Jam at Home on Instagram and just let us know. Tell us that you would send us a message there, and let us know that you would love for us to pray for you. Send us a message there, and we'll take that down and we'll pray for you. You can go to our Journey Advent Ministries on Facebook, and you can send us a message there. There's also Prayer Time on Facebook, and you can go there and you can submit your prayer requests. And then, of course, I'm on Facebook as well, and you can go there and you can put messages. And then livestream.com, you can send us a message there as well. I just thank you so much for being here with us today. We're going to bow our heads for a quick word of prayer, and then we're going to end things out today. All right, folks. Father in heaven, I thank you so much for the blessings that you give to us. I thank you for all that you have done for us. I thank you for your scriptures that give us advice, that give us the blueprint on how we can stay connected with you, how we're able to draw close to you, but most importantly, they help us understand that your desire is to save us, not for us to be condemned and not for us to be lost, because the truth is you are coming again to take us home, to be with you where you are. I thank you for that promise. Lord, be with every one of us throughout this next week, and give us the strength that we need to draw closer to you. This is my prayer in the name of Jesus and for His grace. Amen. Take care, folks.